Afternoon, traders. This is Christian Framers, Tribeca Trade Group, and this is your end of day market recap for what is today, Monday, July 28th. We've got a big week ahead for earnings and events this week, and let's talk a little bit about the price action for the day. I hope this is running okay because I've had tech issues all day today with one of my main PCs, and I had to shut down one of my screens on that. So I'm usually dealing with a whole different setup and situation. So hopefully you could see the whole screen here. And if not, it is what it is, and we'll just have to do this differently tomorrow. And hopefully I'll be back to my old setup. So I was, for most part, I was away last week. I worked some half days, but no end of day videos. So we'll kind of just go through a couple things that I think are important for today. And number one, you have the market kind of hanging in there for the day. A little bit of a tough day again when you start green on the day. We have a little bit of a gap up, and that's kind of tough. So the reason for the gap up was we heard about possible trade deals on Sunday before futures opened. But my opinion is the market has kind of moved on a little bit from that, and it's not that big of a catalyst for like a big jump higher. And I would also say the same thing on the downside. Like if you hear about one of these trade deals and it gets a snag and the sides are moving apart, I don't think the market's going to sell off big on that way either. So I don't think upside or downside. I think the market has kind of moved on from the tariff situation unless something really large changes there. I don't think that's what the market is that interested in right this second. What I do think the market is interested in is what we're going to get in for some of these earnings reports. And I think it's kind of going to be wide open, just as like, even if you look at some of the names that reported after the close today, you've got some moves down. You've got EXEL. I hope you can see this, by the way. EXEL, which is down about 12.7%. WHR is down 12.5%. WWD, which really ran into its earnings report, down at 7.5%. These are just large companies, by the way. And then you've got Cadence, AMKR, Rambus, a few more like tech and semi names doing well. Synopsys, I think, is up on the back of Cadence, up 7.7%. You got Crane Company, which is an industrial. COHR is also up after hours. So that's kind of what I'm not making a prediction for this week because we've got a lot of earnings reports. But I think that you are going to see some up and some down. My earnings list that I put together every quarter earnings strength and gap list, and we've got 35 names on that list already. So I don't keep track of the ones going to the downside, but certainly we've seen names go to the downside. So I think number one, and I will check just to see that this is live and recording, which I think it is. So that's going to look weird. But I think that's why you're kind of seeing us flatline a little bit. And we're still way overbought. So we're continuing to ride the trend up. Being that this is kind of tough to look at, that the price action, well, number one, the price action is staying above the 5-period moving average, right? So there's just no change in trend in the short-term trend. And that's why I paid attention to the 5-day moving average, because look at how price is honoring it. Sometimes there's a few ugly looking candles in here where we got above, we got a little bit below, but by the end of the day, we're honoring this 5-day moving average for now. I don't know what will derail that. I do know that we have weaker seasonality once we get into August. So maybe that might be it, but it could be something else too. I know some people were probably saying, oh, maybe after monthly options expiration, things were going to get weak. So it's a loser's, to me, we always want to be prepared about things that we have to watch out for. We do have a Fed meeting this week, but we don't want to always think about, oh my God, it could be this, it could be this, it could be that, right? That's not the right way to be trading. You want to be prepared, but you don't want to be constantly thinking about what could bring us down, right? That's just not going to work at the end of the day. And I bring that up because I see a lot of people doing that at this point. Do we look for some divergences that we're seeing? Sure. Like in particular, what I didn't like today was breadth was horrible. And I think that this is the third day that we've seen pretty poor market breadth. Now, it depends what measure that you're looking at. What I'm looking at is up volume versus down volume. For example, you can see that right here on one of my screens here. The up volume today in New York Stock Exchange was 30%, right? And that's kind of, this is the, I believe, like the worst day out of the last three, but it's been trending down and been less than 50% for the last 3 days. Now, we could look at some other measures too. One of the things I put in my midday note is names, all the S&P names that are making 4-week new highs and the new lows, just to see what's going on there in breadth as well. So it's kind of like a different way to slice breadth. One is still looking good, that we're still seeing more names break out to 1-month new highs. But the overall, like, daily, what's going on a day-to-day basis, the last few days, the breadth has been pretty weak in terms of their down volume is pretty substantial. And when you look at today's price action and you go through and you watch some names that opened up 2% and then they give it all back, or they go up 2%. They start up 2%, they go up 4%, and then they finish on the day plus 1%. Right? You're not getting that really strong kick in follow through, because there's just not that buying right now that's going on in the market, and that's evidenced by the NYSE down volume versus up volume. All right, so that's a little bit about that. What I have a chart up is, and what I tend to watch right now. And all the time I watch the 1 hour chart, because sometimes that will give you a signal. You can kind of just see a little bit of a different look on the 1 hour chart versus looking at the daily chart. Look at so again, this is not the easiest trading day unless you're doing a lot of shorting, but there's just not much to really press to the downside with this small of a move. But here's where we open. Here's what SPY opened, filled the gap, but this was just moving down all day today until like the last hour of the day. Now, that's not great. That's not easy to deal with. But at least we know where our support is. And just like last week, and I tweeted this level out when we checked back to the top of the value area for last week, which was right around 624.40. And again, you could go look, and I tweeted that out. I said, hey, we're into the first level of support. Did the same thing today. So we've got the check back into the new value area of the week. And again, that value area is based on last week's activity, and it's significant. And right now we're holding it. So at any time this week, things could change. But right now we've come back into short-term support, and we held it. Qs, look at the same thing here, to a lesser extent, but same thing. Gap up, not that easy to deal with. Again, on these gap ups, I've said this before in these videos, I'll say it again. I always want to be a seller into gap ups, right? A net seller into gap ups. Because why do I do that? Or why would I say that? Because over time, buying the close and selling the open is far more profitable than buying the open and selling the close. If you don't believe me, put that into Grok, you could put that into Google and say, tell me about the overnight moves versus day moves. And it's something like, it's not even close. It's like up 500% versus up 8%. Over the last 20 years. It is remarkable, buying the close and selling the open, how much more profitable it is the other way. People don't always think about it that way, but that's why I'm always a net seller, or at least I try to be, once we get a gap up into the open. And then you can kind of sit and watch how things develop when that happens. Unless we're in a raging situation where we were a few weeks ago, where the breadth is super strong, but it's not right now. So, and again, my reasoning why is because we're a little bit overbought, and we've got a heck of a lot of earnings. IWM has kind of been a little bit of the culprit the last couple of days, but there's no breakdown here either. It's just really not going anywhere. All right, so that's your overall recap for the indices, and you could kind of see this too. This is why I look at this column quite a bit. This is change from the open to tell you what's strong, or where were their buyers, or where were their sellers. And you can see the microcaps, which opened up about 1% today, sold off throughout the whole session today, right? Small caps to a lesser extent. So again, I mentioned there's the culprit of why the breadth has not been particularly good, is because you're seeing that price action out of the small caps. Bitcoin was up 1.1% today. I want to kind of start with that chart, but you could see what outperformed. It was a lot of energy, right? And I know a lot of people just are not that positioned in those energy stocks. So that's a little bit of a bummer, but you could see, again, more areas in like the red here versus the green, and the areas that were in the green were most likely, some of the areas that aren't real popular on social media with retail traders. One area that stood out to me was the semiconductors. So I'm going to go. That's the next group, but that really showed some strength in the growth area today. Was the semiconductors that stood out to me. All right, so I'm going to go over a couple charts here. Let's talk about Bitcoin. I'll just use the IBIT. Maybe this test of the 20-day moving average. I covered this in the weekend video that I did on Sunday. I said maybe this shakes things out a little bit. That's what Bitcoin likes to do. Remember, by the way, that Bitcoin, or if you're trading any cryptos, right, there's no margin call. Meaning, well, there is a margin call, but it's different. In equities, you get a margin call. You have time to either deliver money or stock to satisfy that margin call. What happens in crypto? You don't get, as soon as it goes through, for the folks that are leveraged, if it breaks through a particular that level, um, you get liquidated, right? You don't have time to meet that margin call. All of a sudden, and that's why you see such whippy moves to the downside in cryptos a lot, because of those mass liquidations when it goes down. And when you want to be careful when you see a lot of leveraged longs, whether it's Bitcoin, Ethereum, or any other crypto, because it's very vulnerable. If there's a move down, you're often going to see this big yank lower, like you maybe see on this day and on here, because the leverage longs will automatically get liquidated, right? Once that threshold, whatever the maintenance is, for margin call. But anyway, let's see if we can begin to kind of build here. I just want to go over the Ethereum chart too while we're speaking of that, because I thought that this was kind of interesting. We're right at the top of the value for the year. So yes, this does look like a nice bull flag, but the level that I would be watching in Ethereum, this is futures, by the way, this is not the actual crypto, and that's 3863. Notice and again, this is a what we're this big gray box is the value area for the year, and really I tend to look at that on the weekly chart. So we do have all week for Ethereum to possibly break that 3863 level for a break higher, but for now it's hesitating right at major resistance. All right. I talked about the indices. Let's talk about the semiconductors. Really, I mean, one heck of a move. This is the weekly chart again for AMD, but this is really shining. Congrats to holders. I never got long Ethereum, not Ethereum. I have Ethereum, but AMD, I never really got long this, and I looked at it several times. I really thought we saw a change in tone, all the way back in here. Once you heard about other companies starting to use AMD's AI chips, right? And that's been the concern before, that they weren't able to compete with NVIDIA, but you are starting to hear that they've won some things. And lo and behold, the stock acts different. And it's been acting great. Nice little move back here. This is probably where I should have gotten and paid attention and got long to the stock, but it is what it is. You can't catch everyone. And I'll say it again, congrats to the longs. Watch the resistance coming up here at 177.49. That's the top of the yearly value area, and I would expect some type of consolidation there. NVIDIA has been acting really well too, right? I talked about, and I think I posted this on Twitter, that when this gap fill happened, that was it. Right, there was a recovery right after that move down. So what I want to keep stressing here is that dips get bought, and your strongest names, and that was a heck of a nice buy off of that gap fill in here, and now right back out to new highs in just a couple days. That's a lovely move, and a lovely recovery back and buy the dip opportunity. I just want to go through another one that we've had on our watch list the last couple of weeks, which is Cadence. That's a new closing high for Cadence today. That name has been very strong. I've really liked how this name has been acting recently. A slower mover, of course, in the space is Broadcom, which again continues to kind of do its thing, grind higher. I do have both NVIDIA and Broadcom on in the TTG trend portfolio. That's a portfolio of 50 names, and have some names that have done really well this year. But again, it's a pretty diverse basket, right? It's kind of like the IBD 50 basket, but maybe a little bit more diverse. All right, so that's what's impressed me about that. And also, I even tried trading a little bit when I was having some tech problems this morning, MarVL Technologies, because I like to move out of the value area for the for the month, but I kind of just abandoned it right now because I'm not really in the mood to be pressing trades into the end of adding a lot of exposure or trades into the end of the month. I try to be a little bit more conservative as we wrap up the month because I generally think towards the end of the month it gets a little bit more difficult. All right. What else did I want to cover? Pullbacks, right? So let me start with a couple of names that are on my eye, right? And a couple of names for our weekend watch list. This is my weekend watch list, by the way. I don't normally put this in the public video, but I had a bad tech day, so I don't. It's easier for me to go over in this video, so that's what I'm going to do. So we covered CRDO, which did well. Coinbase, which again has not triggered, but I'm getting interested with the check back to the 20-day moving average. This is now a must watch for me, even though it has earnings later in the week. Another one that fell decently today. So again, I'm covering a couple of names that are pulling back here. Why? Because a lot of these names got extended. And if you're like me and okay with market dips, I actually want to see these names dip. I don't really want to be after, like, if I've made a move and been in the stock like this, right, and then it pulls back a little bit, it's harder to get involved like in here. I think a check back to the 20-day moving average helps a little bit. And so that's what I would be watching for Rocket Labs. And if it turns around before that, so be it. But it really puts these names on the forefront of my watch list when these names dip a little bit, because we've certainly seen buyers step into these things. Oklo, and I did rotate out of some of my uranium exposure on Friday. I was long 3 different names, and I sold I sold SMR. I sold LEU, and I'm still holding CCJ, right? And the reason why I did that is just because these names are extended, right? And even though there was some news this morning, again, I had tech problems, so I right when all that was going on. But even though there was a dip in this, it got bought today. But it's just the fact that I wouldn't be surprised if these names kind of consolidate a little bit. Maybe I'm being a little bit too proactive, but I know that the momentum names, right? I just don't want to get caught with things at the end of the month. But this recovered quite nicely too, still down 1.3% for the day. A few other names that I am watching is IoT. A lot of September 45 calls traded on. I don't know if there's any legitimacy to this, that Apple might be interested in this company. No idea, but still a lot of September 45 calls traded. Let's see if it can push through that value area and get maybe back to the 50-day moving average. Another name that's kind of a software play is Unity Software, which is on my watch list. Again, pullback after getting extended. Let's see if it wants to retake the 5-day moving average. Very close there. Also, you could examine this on the 1-hour chart too and see that it's trying, right? It's trying to kind of push here and get out of this area that's kind of been just down drifting here a little bit. So there's a nice move back above this 50 period moving average on the 1-hour chart, and not bad. Another name that I'm watching too is RBRK, right? We know that the cyberspace has not been in favor the last couple of weeks, so it's trying to turn here, right? It's trying to been trying to hold the bottom of the value area very nicely for the month. Let's go back to that 1-hour chart. There is a VPOC that was taken out here, which is just from last week. So I would watch to see if it can maintain above 87.80, 87.32. CEG, I'm not going to go through all these names. I went over Unity, ENVX. Try to turn again. Just felt like a lot of traps today. And again, looking at the market breadth and noticing how weak it was today helped me just kind of sit on my hands a little bit today. I like to go after dips, like overall, like, so say for example, like the market gaps up a little bit, and then in the first half hour of the day, it gives back that gap up and sells off a little bit. And I look in the market breadth, like the up volume is like 65% for the day. I'm going to be a buyer of that dip. If I look at if that's going on, and I look at the NYSE volume and it's 30% up volume, no, I'm not. We know that we've got that for the day. It's not great market dynamics. ENVX, watch this level here, just above the value area. That's 1503 value area for the week. So a little bit of a trap there. and move back. But again, that's a situation. You're going to see from me, I just want to mention this because we've got a really big feature coming out for the MarketWebs, something that folks have been asking us for a while. TradingView, we're now able to do some scanning. We've done some programming. My colleague Web Begol, he does the programming, and we've got some things to roll out. So stay tuned. We'll probably do a quick video about the screener and some of the features and basically how to set it up. And then we're going to give a webinar where we can kind of ask questions, where we can answer questions about this, because we've got a lot of features that are built in here. We've got fresh breakouts. We've got just names that are trading above their value area, and you can break this out by daily chart, 1 hour chart, weekly chart, so multiple different time frames. As well as you could see bullish and bearish 80% rules. We've got all that we're going to be able to scan for, and we're going to release that soon so that the folks that are on this platform can get access to it. It is a huge feature. We're super excited about it. More to come on that. So that's it for today's video. I'm going to be watching tomorrow Spotify, which reports earnings tomorrow morning. By the way, nice report by CLS. Right, I bought this name last week, but I knew I wasn't going to hold it into earnings. But my goodness, what a move! In after a big move already, the stock's up to 192. So there are going to be names that can do this, but there's also going to be names that fall flat after being up quite a bit over the last quarter. I'll leave it there, guys. Have a great night. See you tomorrow.